In this video, I'm going to go over some finance rules of thumb. Hopefully some of them can help you out or give you something to look at. There are many finance rules of thumb out there, from various budgeting rules of thumb to rules on how certain things should cost or how much you should save or invest. These are rules of thumb to help make budgeting easier and are not hard and fast rules. Most of the budgeting rules of thumb you'll see come from your after-tax take-home pay. So if you're investing a large portion of your income before you see any of it into your 401k or equivalent, that would still be part of the savings portion of these budgeting rules of thumb. These rules of thumb do not work perfectly for all income levels, which is why it is a rule of thumb and not a law of thumb. It can give you a good starting point to base your budgeting. In this video, I'm going to be talking about numerous different budgeting rules of thumb, and the idea isn't to just tell you you have to follow any individual rule of thumb, but it's just to give you some ideas of how you can implement these rules of thumb into your own finances. For some of these budgeting rules of thumb, I'll be putting up on the screen what it may look like if your take-home pay after taxes was $5,000 a month. This might help you visualize these budgeting rules of thumb. If you live in a high-cost living area, it's possible that these rules of thumb become impossible to actually follow. Note that I am giving a bunch of different budgeting and finance rules of thumb, and some of them may contradict each other. I'm simply trying to give you some various rules of thumb and hoping some of them might give you a starting point and help you out in your financial journey. All right, first rule we're talking about is the 50-30-20 budget rule. In this rule, you have 50% of your after-tax income is being spent on needs and obligations. When they say needs and obligations, this is talking about things like your rent or your mortgage, the minimum payment on any debts that you may have, insurance, your car payment, and groceries. After that, 20% should go towards your savings and debt repayment, and 30% will go to everything else. This is the part of the budget that talks about going to eat out, going to see a movie, going out with friends, anything else you might want to buy. That's what that 30% is for. The next budget rule we'll talk about is the 80-20 budget rule. This one states that 80% of your after-tax income goes to your needs and your wants, and then 20% go directly to your savings. This plan ensures that you save and it pays yourself first before paying for any kind of living expenses. That way it ensures that you put something away every month. This budget rule or method is a good starting point for those who don't like to meticulously track expenses. If you think about it, it's just a more simplistic version of the 50-30-20 rule. You're still sending 20% to savings and debt repayment. The other 80%, you're just not specifically saying needs and obligations, everything else. Next, we have the 30-30-30-10 budget rule. This one has you spending 30% of your after-tax income on housing, 30% on other necessities like utilities, and then it has only 10% for things that you want, like eating out, traveling, etc. This budgeting rule has a big focus on prioritizing financial goals because it allocates 30% towards savings and debt. All right, this next rule is called the 28-36 rule, and it's not a budgeting rule. This rule states that the household should spend no more than 28% of your gross monthly income on total housing costs, including the principal and interest, homeowners insurance, PMI, HOA, and property taxes. This rule also states that you should avoid paying any more than 36% of your gross monthly income towards all of your debts. Meaning if you used 28% of your income towards housing, you only have 8% for all other debts. This rule is one of the few that talks about gross income and not net. The emergency fund rule of thumb. The goal is to have 3 to 6 months of expenses in an emergency fund. If you have a more volatile field of work, consider saving 6 to 12 months worth of expenses in the emergency fund. This emergency fund is for emergencies like being laid off, fired, unexpected bills that pop up, but it is based on the expenses that you have each month. Next, we have a rule of thumb for purchasing a home. There is a rule out there that says a home should cost no more than 2.5 to 3 times your gross annual income. This is a rule of thumb that doesn't take interest rates, taxes, or insurance into account, but it's a rule of thumb that's out there that's going to be very difficult to follow in today's housing market, especially with the interest rates being what they are. All right, next, we have a refinancing mortgage rule of thumb. This rule of thumb states that you should consider refinancing your home if interest rates drop by 1% or more. This doesn't necessarily mean you have to do it or you should do it, but if the interest rates drop 1% or more, you need to take the time to do the math and see if it's worth it for you, considering how much longer you plan to keep the house, how much lower the payment would be and how much it would cost to refinance. Next rule that we'll talk about is the rule of 72. This is a rule of thumb for investments. This rule is used to know how long it'll take for your investments to double by dividing 72 by the rate of return. For example, if you use a 10% annual rate of return, it means that the money should double every 7.2 years. The biggest part of investing and being successful is compounding interest, which is demonstrated by this rule. Let's say you invested $10,000 in 2023 and assume a 10% annual return. In 2030, you would have $20,000. In 2037, you would have $40,000. In 2044, you would have $80,000. And in 2051, you would have $160,000, assuming you didn't add any extra money to this account and you had a 10% annual return. In this example, in 28 years, you made 16 times your money because of the power of compounding interest. Year to year, you may have some years that do better and some years that do worse, but the longer you keep putting money into investments, the better they will do. And the key to investing is going to be the long-term investment and compounding effect. Hopefully you found these various rules of thumb informative and helpful in your own finance journey. In the description, there will be a link to a budget spreadsheet from nerdwallet.com that you can use to try and create a budget. You don't need to use that one. You can make your own, or there are a lot of different templates out there. But the important thing is that you actually budget to see where your money needs to be going or is currently going, and see if you can apply some of these rules of thumb to your own life and situation that matches your goals. Let me know down in the comments below if you're going to be implementing any of these rules of thumb or already utilizing them as a starting point. Like and subscribe for more videos about money and personal finance.